Hello, this is Mike Rogers with an introduction to Swagger video. It should take about 10 minutes. I'm going to start with Visual Studio 2015. I'm going to pick File, New Project. I'm going to select under Web, ASP.NET Web Application. Sorry, ASP.NET Web Application. I am going to call it Swagger Demo. I'm going to pick Azure API app. Basically, just no need. I'm not going to really publish or anything, but just by habit, I do everything Azure first. I'm going to go ahead and create it. So the Swagger demo is going to be a web API with REST endpoints that are utilized through a controller. When you create a new web API project, it automatically creates a values controller by default. If you look in the values controller, you'll see that basically it already has in Swagger basically built in. So Swashbuckle is the framework behind Swagger, and Swagger basically is the documentation of basically your REST endpoints in your controller. So you'll see by default it has a get, which returns two values, value 1, value 2. There's a get by ID, which returns just value, and then a couple posts, puts, and deletes that really actually don't do anything. They're just kind of wired in there for your use. So just a quick discussion about Swagger. So I picked, I don't know if you noticed, but it was an MVC5 web API, not the new MVC6. MVC6 actually comes, when you do its templates and you do a web API, they're very lean. They don't actually have any frameworks installed. I think going forward, Microsoft wants to do more of an a la carte model where you basically download and use what you want. It's not going to preload stuff for you. So I picked the older MVC because I knew it was wired in and it'd be less work for this 10-minute video. So let's move forward. Really, it's already wired in and already ready to use. So let's go ahead and run the web app. And if I go to Swagger and then docs and then version 1, basically we'll see it comes down and it basically returns a Json. So I'm going to go ahead and open the file, and let me reformat it so we can read a little bit better. So you'll see that it has the different paths. So it has our values controller. It has the methods that are inside that controller, the get, the post, the get by ID, the put, and the delete. One of the other nice things that it does is you can see that it has all the different response types that are possible for that call, and then also the parameters. So it basically is documenting basically what the input is for that REST method. So one of the things when I saw this was, wow, I could probably create an integration test platform that can dynamically call new methods or new controllers as they come in. Especially if it was a CRUD type of web API where all the different objects were just, hey, I want you to create, delete, update, and get. So I haven't done that yet. Maybe that'll be a topic for another video. But for right now, I just wanted to kind of show what's built in and what can be used. If you do search, like you Google Swagger and proxy generator, there's a lot of different articles out there for how to do that. So really, what I see this as, maybe it's a simplistic view, but it's a WSDL for REST, instead of SOAP. So let's go forward. I'm going to close that. I don't really need to save it. And one of the other things I wanted to show was one of the things that you get out of having that JSON is a tool that is actually built into this web API also. So let's go into the Swagger config. So if you go under App Start, there's a Swagger config, and you'll see that there's a whole enable Swagger section that basically has all the different methods that you can enable and use. So you'll see in here, I just have a single API version v1, so that was what the v1 was, but you can actually implement multiple versions of your REST API, which if you've done any long-term projects, you definitely can get to the point where you're doing the next version, and it's nice to isolate it by a /v2 in your endpoint. So you can see it also implements a little bit of authentication. You can do basic auth, API key, OAuth. So there's a lot in here, too much probably to go through in 10 minutes for sure. But one of the most important ones, just to get started, is this enable Swagger UI. So I'm going to uncomment that section, and I'm going to run again. And let's see what that did for us. So now if I just do Swagger, you'll see I go to this nice UI, and it actually has our controller, our values controller, and all the different methods for all the REST endpoints for that. So you can see that if I do get, try it out, it actually does return that value 1 and value 2 that we saw on our controller for this first get. So right off the bat, you can see that there's a useful tool that gets built in. It's probably, I don't know if you'd want to leave this enabled in production. Maybe. I guess it depends on what your app is. If you wanted people to utilize it and didn't have to worry much about authentication or whatever, you could probably use it. But real easily in that config, you could basically turn off the UI. So that's basically the first part. Let me do something just to show you that it actually will just grow based on controllers. So real quick, what I'm going to do is let me add a folder here for data. And what I'm going to do is I've created in my SQL Server, I created a Swagger demo database, and I put one table in it called contact, and it's just an ID, first name, last name, email, auto-generated ID int IG. So I'm going to use Entity Framework. So I'm going to just add a new item. I'm going to go into Data, Entity Data Model. I'm going to call it Swagger Demo Context. And I'm going to pick code first from database. Let's see. Let's make sure I'm getting the right data. So I'm going to do localhost and pick my database, Swagger demo. Say OK. Next, go ahead and pick my table and say finish. So this is going to create Entity Framework, Context, and Code First class for my contact. You can see that I actually already added all the references to Entity Framework that I needed. Then it also probably, I know it did, but under my web config, you'll see it added Entity Framework. And down here is my context, which is just a really simple connection string to my local database. So from that, what I can do pretty quickly is I can go to my controller. I can add a new controller. And this time I'm going to pick WebApi controller with actions using Entity Framework. So that lets me pick that new class, the code first class, and my context. I'm not going to do asynchronous just for ease of use. I'm going to go ahead and add that. Oops, I forgot. What you need to do first is build once you've created that context. So it just built. Let's go back to the controllers. Add new controller and a new framework. Let's try this again. We'll pick contact. We'll pick Swagger demo and say OK. So right now it's creating a new controller based on that Entity Framework Code First class that I have in the context. And you'll see here's the context controller. Here's the context, and it basically has the scaffolding for get contacts, which is iQueryable, which is kind of nice. You can, so you can build your filters off of this. You can do, get contact by ID. You can put contacts, so I can save a contact. I can post a contact and delete a contact, and it already builds in all my dispose of my context object. So let's go ahead and now let's just run it. Let's just run it again and see what happens. So if I run it and do Swagger, you'll see that goes to the UI, and now it has the contacts controller in there and all the methods that I just generated. So it did all that work pretty quickly, from database connection to my controller. So if I do like a get, my database has probably me in it. Yeah, I created one earlier, so there's me, Mike Rogers, me at home, ID 1. But just to show you, I can basically go ahead and create another one pretty quickly. This is a nice thing, right? It shows you the schema of the body, and it's JSON, so I can basically click on that. It brings it over, the schema for the REST call, the JSON. And really easily I can add a new user. Sorry if there's a Joe Smith on the meeting. So jsmith at live.com, and I basically can go ahead and try it out. I posted. It responded with that there was a new contact, a new ID of 2. Response code was 201, which was success. And now if I go back to my gets, I can, oops, wrong button, try it out, and you'll see that there's 2. I can also go down to delete, and I can do 1, which I know is me. Try it out. A response that I deleted, response was 200, so it succeeded. Deleted Mike Rogers, and now if I go back to get and try it out, there should be just Joe Smith left. So you can see very simply, all that stuff wired in, and the UI, knows about it because of that JSON that gets generated. This UI basically dynamically gets created from that JSON. So that's it for this demo. If I come up with any new tools that I start generating from Swagger, I'll make sure to make another video. But for now, that's it. Thanks for attending.